Hi, I'm Alegre Ramos, founder of Beyond Your Wildest Dreams and host of the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. And I'm so happy that you're here with me today. If you heard my podcast last week, then you know what the topic is today. And the topic is about the fact that I have been in a long relationship, and I want to share what I learned in finding my partner, figuring out that he was the person I wanted to spend, I guess, my life, or a big chunk of my life, or I don't know, we're hardly anywhere near the end of it, so it feels crazy to say my life, but and so what I've learned being in a long-term relationship, my I guess my number one tip for what it takes to have a long-term relationship. And if you're joining me for the first time, just a little bit about me. I am a productivity and time management expert. I want to help you prioritize yourself and your goals. And I do that through the books I've written, through corporate trainings that I do. Maybe your company or your organization is interested in having me come in and do a 1 hour, 2 hour training, and also through this podcast. And I have found there's a common saying in the productivity world. It's been attributed to a bunch of different people. So I think it's just one of those things that's just out there now, that for every 1 minute you spend planning, you will save 10 minutes of doing. That's 1,000% return on investment. That's a great investment, no matter if it's money, or if it's time, or if it's sleep. Wow, that'd be amazing. Anyway, and so I have found that this is absolutely true. The reason why I'm allowed to accomplish all the things that I accomplish is because of my planning skills, which is why I call my podcast the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. I've co-authored these 4 books. They're really workbooks. They're all designed to be read and worked through in about an hour, so that when you have finished reading this book, you will have gained some sort of skill, more than one, because I know that you learn best not only when you read, but when you do, when you put something into practice. And so that's what I help you do with my workbooks. Now, the beginning of my podcast, I always start with pulling a card from this little deck of cards, because there's always something interesting here. And so let's pull a card. I never know what I'm always surprised. What we do today, right now, will have an accumulated effect on all our tomorrows. Alexandra Stoddard. What we do today, right now, will have an accumulated effect on all our tomorrows. Absolutely. This is something that I train on a lot, because, it's so easy when we set a goal for ourselves. We think about the big picture, and we think about, oh, well, I want to accomplish that goal in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. And it's human nature to put things off, to deal with it. I'll deal with it when I get to it. However, so many things in life that are important don't have deadlines attached to them. I'm just going to use myself as an example because it's easiest. I had this goal of producing a stand-up comedy show. No one was asking me to do it. I had to choose a date to do it by. It was important to me, so I prioritized it by giving it a date. And I set a date 5 months in advance. And I did a little bit almost every day to work towards that goal. Some days it was finding comedians to be in my show. Some days it was talking to other comedy producers and asking them what worked for them. Other days it was looking at different venues and seeing what venue I wanted to have it at, making phone calls, finding out what's the cost of using your space, what are the logistics of using your space. It was what I did in those days that accumulated to the point where 5 months later, I had a sold out show. You have to pick a day for whatever it is, the goal that you have for yourself. That there's so many goals that we all have for ourselves that benefit nobody but us. maybe it's a fitness goal. You want to be able to do a certain race or a competition or fun event, like a fun run. Or maybe you want to just show up as your healthiest self for a reunion or a wedding or a party. Sometimes you'll have these external motivators to help light a fire under your butt. And sometimes you just have to pick a date, like with writing these books. Again, I had to pick dates that I wanted to publish these books, and then I backed into writing them. But it's the everyday effect. I'm holding up the card for those who are maybe listening to this as a podcast. It's what we do right now will have an accumulated effect on all of our tomorrows, Alexandra Stoddard. So it's the things, it's your daily activity is what accumulates into your successes or rewards or your outcomes that you're going to reap later on. And that's true for, your goals, but that's also true for the topic that I'm going to get into. So let me just segue into my topic about being in a long-term relationship. Oh, before I do that, I'm trying to give people up front what is going to be on the podcast coming up. So next week's podcast, I'm going to talk, and that will be July 24th. I will be talking about my holistic approach to health. A lot of people, when they find out I'm 51, and if you're watching for the first time, maybe you didn't know that, I am 51. Hello. People ask me about my skincare. And I'm happy to tell you what skincare products I use. Skincare is just one part of what makes my skin look like this. And so I decided next week, and by the way, I have done podcasts where I have done my full skincare routine on camera, so you can go back and look for those. I've decided that next week I'm going to talk about my kind of holistic approach. So talking about, what I sleep, what I drink, my stress management techniques. I'm going to talk about all of those things next week. And then the week after, July 31st, a couple of my friends are going to join me. You've seen them here on my podcast before. Mom friends, we're going to talk about the run-up to the new school year. Because if you're a parent, then you are going to start thinking about that. In fact, I just ordered my kid's new backpack. She was very specific about what she wanted, so I ordered it yesterday. So that's the next 2 weeks. Okay, so how does this saying, what we do right now will have an accumulated effect on all our tomorrows, how does that tie into relationships? Because relationships are about your day-to-day interactions. And it's really hard to live with someone, whether or not they're a romantic partner, maybe they're just a roommate, maybe it's a friend or family member that you live with. It's really hard to live with somebody who isn't managing that day-to-day interaction, because let's say you live with someone who doesn't say thank you. Those day-to-day interactions that don't end in some sort of gratitude can pile up and end up in resentment later on. So day-to-day action is so important. If you manage your day-to-day, if you say, I'm going to drink water and I'm going to eat well and I'm going to get some movement in and I'm going to be nice to people and I'm going to go to bed on time. If you do those things, let me tell you, you're winning. Like those are key things. And I know it's so easy that in between, like I have to get this business proposal to somebody and then I have to prepare that PowerPoint and then I have to do a podcast. I mean, trust me, I have all those other things to do too. But if I let those things take over and keep me from hydrating and eating well and being kind and getting sleep, then okay, so I got a little philosophical there. So let me get back onto my specific topic about long-term relationship. My husband and I met 20 7 years ago, 28 years ago. Sorry, 28 years ago. We met 28 years ago. And I don't remember meeting, actually. So here's some stories I've never told before. I don't remember meeting the first time. He said that we met in an elevator. I do not remember that. But I knew of him because we worked at an organization that did not have that many people under 50. And so the organization was filled with hundreds of people, and there were maybe only 20 of us who were in our 20s. And so we all kind of knew each other. Now, the company did not have a non-fraternization policy. We were totally allowed to date if we wanted to date. But neither of us, and we didn't talk about this, but neither of us wanted to date anyone at work because, you're going to go there every day. If it doesn't work out, yada, yada, yada. So fast forward 1 year, and we decided to give it a go. Now, here's the thing that I think you all could learn from this was, so we'd known each other for about a year, but 1 or 2 weeks before we decided to give it a go, I had decided that I had a fulfilling life. I had friends and family that I enjoyed spending time with. I had goals that I wanted to work on. I was 24 at the time. Goals I wanted to work on. And I had decided that if a person didn't have certain qualities, then there was no point in me pursuing any sort of romantic relationship with them. And I came up with a list of all the qualities because at that point, yes, I was only 24, but I had dated quite a few people, mostly because I didn't get into long-term relationships. I would go out on a couple of dates and say, no, there's something missing there. Or I would date someone for 3 months and I would say, oh, there's something missing there. I didn't really have many long-term relationships. I think the longest relationship I'd had, by the time I was 24, the longest relationship I'd had been about a year. And so I looked back. So this is my first tip. If you've decided that you are looking for someone to spend your life with, and by the way, I didn't know that I would find this person. I wasn't like on the hunt. I just knew that I didn't want to go out on these 1 date, 2 date, 3 month things because they felt like a waste of time. I said, I'd rather spend my time with my friends or working on things that are important to me. And so what I did was I came up with a list, or I guess you could call it kind of a plan. I came up with a list of qualities that I now knew, based on experience, would not work for me. So if a person had these qualities, there was no point in going on a date because it just wasn't going to work. I called it my list of deal breakers. And a deal breaker had to be just that. Literally, there's no point in me spending a minute of my time with this person if they have any of these things. And it just made it a really easy checklist, mental checklist. I didn't actually pull out this list and say, like, wait a second, do you have... I didn't do that. But it was a mental checklist. And so, for instance, one of the things that was on there was that the person could not be a smoker. That was just a deal breaker for me. And yes, I had dated people who were smokers. And I realized that this is just an easy thing for me to kind of mentally say, nope, no smokers. And it would be easy to just say, lovely to meet you. Thank you so much. Because I just didn't want to waste my time. I had friends and family and goals that I could spend my time on. I didn't need to go on these random dates for no reason. So my list had 22 deal breakers, which some people think is a lot, but I think if you go through them and start listing them, you'd be surprised. For instance, so no smoking was one of them. Must feel the same way about religion that I feel. right? That seems straightforward. Must feel the same way about their parents as I feel. So you notice I'm not saying for what kind of relationship this person needs to have with their parents, but I just knew that they had to feel similarly because I had dated someone who felt very differently towards his parents. And because of that, he didn't want me to spend time with my parents. And that, obviously, the moment he asked me that, that was a huge red flag. And I said, uh, no, I'm going to see my parents as much as I want to see my parents. So you see, there's already 3 deal breakers. It actually gets very easy. I wanted someone who I thought had a good sense of humor. I wanted someone who was financially, uh, I don't remember what the term was that I wrote down, but financially, uh, balanced, so like not in debt, working towards things, financial goals. So that's already 5 deal breakers. So having this list was so helpful, so helpful. It helped me to just, when I met someone and they asked me out on a date, you know, we could just like have a conversation and eventually one of the 22 would come up. And I'd say, oh, okay, well, thank you, but I don't think we're not a good fit. I can tell you we're not a good fit. So I had written this list. I already knew my husband for around a year, but the day that we decided to go on a date, it had only been like 2 weeks since I'd written that list because when I saw him this time and we ran into each other at a grocery store near our work, and we were in the same aisle and we were in the health food aisle. And so it just made me realize like here's someone who cares about their health, which was on my list of deal breakers. Like it made me see him in a new light. I suddenly was willing because the deal breakers list was in my head and because oh here's someone who clearly doesn't, he's clearly aligned with some of my values because that's really what my deal breakers were about. They were about being really clear about what my values were around who I'd want to spend my time with. And so uh, we actually went out on a lunch date, and during that lunch, which lunch dates are great because they're super short, an hour, and it was very clear to me from speaking to him that he he didn't have any of my deal breakers, or he did have my deal breakers. Some of my deal breakers were written as cannot smoke. Some of my real deal breakers were written in the positive, like must be health conscious. So he was aligned with my list. So that would be my first tip to you is if you've decided that you no longer want to sort of date randomly, if you want to have more of a plan around the people that you spend your time with, come up with a list of deal breakers, which again, you have to be very strict about. It has to be like, this trait will end a relationship. Because what's the point of starting a relationship that you know is going to end right up front, right? That just made a lot of sense. So then my second tip to you in terms of having a long-term relationship is about figuring out when you're ready to make a commitment. And my husband and I had been dating for about 3.5 years when we got engaged. And I had heard I don't remember where I heard it, but I had heard someone say, it was a gentleman who was giving advice to his daughter. I don't remember where I heard it though, if it was on the radio or what. But this gentleman had suggested that you should get married when you realize that you already are, you just haven't had the party. And I remember there was a point about 3.5 years into our relationship where I realized I felt married to this person. I felt connected in a partnership sort of way. And we got when I had that realization, we got engaged. Neither of us remembers which of us said, like, "Hey, we should get married." It was probably me. Knowing me, it was probably me. But he says, "Yeah, I just don't remember because it just made perfect sense." So maybe it was him. Who knows? But it was like we came to this realization at the same time. Like, we are married. We should just have the party. So that's my second tip is like whenever I hear of someone being surprised about an engagement, like if someone asks you to get married and you're surprised, well, it might be a little too early. And what I can tell you is that because we were already married in my head, that we never had cold feet, and neither did my husband. We never second guessed our decision to get married. And by the way, we had a long engagement, almost. It was right around 18 months. No, it was 18 months. Yes, our engagement was 18 months, a year and a half. And never in that time did we question it. But the other nice thing about having a long engagement was that, again, it just further reinforced this idea of, oh, we're already married. We didn't have to set a date right away. We allowed ourselves, and we didn't actually tell anybody that we were engaged for, I think, 2 months. Because I actually said to him, I said, I just need to become adjusted to this concept. I honestly didn't really ever think I was going to get married. So I said to him, I said, I need time to adjust my thinking before we can start telling people. And so for 2 months, we didn't tell anybody. And I think that was great. You should be sure. You should be okay. Like I thought I was ready, but that 2 months really just cemented it for me. And then the 18-month engagement just made it super clear that yes, I was totally cool with this decision. So that is my tip on when you know you're ready and how to know you're ready. My third tip is about having a long-term relationship. So at this point, my husband and I have been together for, uh, yeah, 27 years. Can't believe it. And I, I really think it's an amazing thing to have a relationship of your choosing, a long-term relationship of your choosing. Hopefully you have friends and families that you've had for a long time. I have some friends in my life that I've actually known longer than my husband, which I'm very blessed and grateful for. But it's really special to have someone that you know is always in your corner, no matter what, who has seen you at your worst, who has seen you with, morning breath, who has seen all of your idiosyncrasies. Like, actually, when we started dating, my husband said that I used to have this quirk about not fully closing drawers. Drawers. I wouldn't always close, I guess, especially kitchen drawers, he commented. And it was funny because I don't remember that, but he thought it was endearing. If you can find someone who thinks your idiosyncrasies, like not closing your drawers, is endearing, that's lovely. And so I do think that there's something beneficial to having these long-term relationships of choice. Again, it doesn't have to be romantic necessarily. It could be a friend or family member. I completely agree with that. But it is really nice. Um, but I think there's a couple things that are really, really key to making it work. One is that, again, going back to what I talked about at the top of the show, your everyday behavior. If you're seeing someone every single day, then you need to be showing up in a way that is pleasant to them. I'm not saying you have to be nice because I don't know, maybe not, maybe there's some people who don't like nice. I don't know. But let's just say you need to show up in a way that is pleasant for that other person. And if you can figure that out in advance, in fact, there was a wonderful book I read called My Wife Said You Might Want to Marry Me. And I'll put it in the show notes. This gentleman who wrote this book, his wife passed away from, I believe it was cancer, and she was a journalist. And before she passed away, she wrote a column called something like "You Want to Marry My Husband," or "You Should Want to Marry My Husband." And it was printed, I believe, in the New York Times. And she went through this list of all the reasons he was great and how she wanted him to find happiness when she passed. And so she was kind of giving her permission to the entire world to, you know, look out for her husband. And then he wrote his book. He wrote his book kind of in answer to that column and his experiences in having a long-term relationship. And one of the things that was really amazing about their marriage was that they had set out their list of things that they wanted to define their marriage by. For instance, we will dress up and go out once a week. We will laugh often and heartily. And I don't think they knew exactly what, I don't think they thought we need to come up with a set of guidelines for our marriage for the rest of our lives. I think they just felt like these are the things that make us happy. We want to keep doing it. And if, I would highly recommend that you do something like that before you get married, just to make it clear, because this is an exercise that my husband and I did about 13 years ago, which is coming up with our family mission statement. And it has been so wonderful. It has really helped with the day-to-day communication, with showing up for each other in ways that is supportive for each other. It's been so helpful. And actually, that's what inspired this book, Walk Your Mission. When we came up with a mission statement, it was almost like you have an accountability partner in the room. Because let's say your family says, we will not shout at each other. And everyone agrees, right? Like, we agree, we're not going to shout at each other. Yep, I agree, I agree, I agree. Great. You write it onto a poster board or a piece of paper or whatever, and you put it on the wall. For a long time, we had ours like on a cardboard piece of paper. It's now a painting, actually, because after we decided that it didn't need any changes, that yes, this is our mission statement, we actually had someone paint it. So it's a painting that lives in our dining room area. And so in this book, Rock Your Mission, I actually go through the steps to creating a family mission statement. And by the way, the subtitle for Rock Your Mission is 3 Steps to Clarity and Buy-in with a Family Mission Statement. And it made it so, it was like having an accountability partner in the room, because if someone was not doing something that we agreed is part of our family mission statement, then someone else could say like, hey, we all agreed that it's important that we spend time outside every day. That's one of the things on our mission. And I'm trying to go on a walk with our dog, and you are sitting in front of the computer or whatever. You know, it made it a lot easier to say things like that, to hold each other accountable. And our kiddo even started, it's funny because she was pre-verbal when we came up with this statement, but as soon as she could talk, she would point out, oh, you're not doing this thing that you said you're going to do. And, doing what you say you're going to do, that's what integrity is. That's what living with integrity is. And so being really clear about, here are the things that define our relationship. Are we or aren't we doing them? It makes it really easy to say, yes, we are on the path. We are, again, going back to today's quote, we are doing the things every day, right now, today, that are going to give us the accumulated benefit of having a relationship that we are happy with. Woo! So those are my tips for having a long-term relationship, finding one, deciding that you want to make it, a permanent or long-term thing, and then setting yourself up for success for that long-term relationship. I would love to hear what you thought about it. You can always comment, and be sure to like and subscribe and rate either this video or this podcast wherever you listen, because that helps me out. It doesn't cost you anything, and it means a lot to me to know that you've either learned something or you've enjoyed something that you've heard on this podcast. And if you want to find Rock Your Mission, you can go to tinyurl.com/bywd books. It's tinyurl.com/bywd books. You can also find everything at bywdreams.com. And I hope you learned something during this. I'd love to hear what it was that you learned. And remember, planning makes everything easier.